Today, I'm talking to Sean Johnson. Sean is a partner at Digital Intent and Founder Equity in Chicago. He's also a professor of marketing at the Kellogg School of Management. He's written extensively about career and personal development, so I knew that he was the perfect person to talk to about navigating the job market during the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Sean Johnson. So welcome, Sean, and thanks for doing this. I think in the wake of sort of COVID-19, college students are scared. They just want some sort of a blueprint to think through the next, 3 to 6 to 12 months. That's biased towards action and not, fear. So why don't we just, I know you've inspired me and we've kind of gone back and forth on Twitter, but why don't you just go, and give a quick background on yourself?
Sure. I'm a partner in two organizations. One is called Digital Intent. It's basically an innovation consulting firm. We work with kind of Fortune 500 companies to bring new products to market. And then I'm a GP at Founder Equity, which is an early stage venture fund in Chicago. We've done 14 investments. I would call it like between seed and Series A. And then I teach a digital marketing class at Kellogg. And I can feel folks' pain because I graduated in 2003, which was kind of definitely not like this by any means, but a lot of my undergrad friends and myself kind of came out and, the timing was really, really bad in terms of jobs and things like that. And so I definitely know what that feeling is like to be 22 or whatever and not, you have the degree, but you don't necessarily have a whole lot else going for you. And how do you kind of piece together the beginnings of a career? So happy to help.
Oh, awesome. I mean, let's just start with, what should people's, mindset be as they kind of approach, no matter who you are,
Yeah.
what's some like just general advice just to start off? Like, what would you suggest students to think like?
Sure. And I'll try to I'll try to frame it put myself in my 22-year-old shoes as much as I can. And it actually, I mean, my story might be helpful. I graduated from the University of Colorado, undergrad, marketing degree, stood up at graduation, gave the talk and all that kind of stuff. Like I thought I was like hot stuff. And then, because I was a psycho, I decided, and because the job market wasn't great, I decided to start my own business and tried to do consulting as a 22-year-old and act like I know what I'm talking about. And it was a mess. And I think I made $12,000 that year. And I'm a year into my career. I'm 23 now, and I'm in Colorado, and I'm sitting on top of there's a hike in like the foothills over there. And I remember sitting there being like, I got to blow this all up. And I shut my company down. I packed what I could fit into my little Suzuki Swift hatchback car, and I drove to Seattle to try to get into like advertising. Couldn't get into advertising. Even though I had a lot of ins and all that kind of stuff, like nobody was hiring. And I was a waiter at a seafood restaurant for 6 months. I'm 23 years old. I'm a year out of school. And everybody thought I was going to do whatever. And I thought I was going to do whatever. And it was a very humbling kind of experience for me. But it was also formative. And I think, with hindsight, I think I learned a lot of things from that experience. I think, and I think it's really helpful from a mental preparation perspective. So I think like the first thing I would say is like, your career is long and your life is long, and there's this pressure to be not just successful, but young and successful, like Forbes 30 under 30. And there's all this kind of stuff. And I think the tech world has only exacerbated that because it's very, age sort of biased. And so I think people feel like they need to kind of come out like a slingshot. And if they don't, there's something wrong with them, or their career is destroyed, or whatever it is. And I just think, A, it's not true. And B, it forces you to make decisions that might not be ideal. It makes you live from a kind of perspective of fear, which I don't think is constructive and doesn't let you do do your best work or make best decisions. And so I think the first thing would be to just like, it is not the end of the world if this is hard for 6 months or for a year or whatever it is. So that
Yeah.
would be the first thing.
No, I mean, totally. I think what I would love to know is like, give us a couple of examples of how you've seen people make those decisions, things that are more short term and maybe not that long term.
Yeah. Well, so, and I guess this gets to my bigger point, which I think is why you wanted to talk, is this idea of kind of investing in a platform and thinking long term. So my students come to me at Kellogg now. So fast forward now, every time I teach a class, I probably have 6 to 10 students that want to get coffee, and every single time it's basically the same narrative. It is, I came from consulting, I got bit by the either the startup bug or whatever it is. I want to change careers and get into either start my own business, or I want to get into marketing, or I want to get into product, and I don't necessarily know how to do that. And in startup land, um, there's often like a bias against, like, you come out with an MBA and you don't have product experience. That's not a pro. That's like a con, because you're going to be expensive, and they think that you're going to come in with certain expectations about responsible. Like, you have a lot actually going against you, right? And
Hmm.
so they ask me for advice, and what they want is to get a job where they basically get to learn on the job, but they get paid like somebody who already knows the job. And I'm like,
Huh.
that's a tough problem to solve. So my advice to them is the same as I think what my advice would be now, and it's only magnified now because now everybody has time to actually do this. But the idea would be basically to do what you've been doing for the last year, is like to invest in building a platform. And you don't think of it as a 3-month exercise, because if you think of it like 3 months exercise, you're going to quit. Because 3 months in, as I'm sure you probably know, still nobody knows who you are and nobody cares. But like, and so my advice to them is like to use the product example. Let's say you're graduating and you want to get a job in product. You have no background in product. You've never done anything. Um, my advice is something along the lines of, put up a website, say that you're if not a product manager, a product enthusiast. You study what makes good products, right? You don't know anything yet, right? So your first step is to read as much as you can about that topic. Take good notes. We've talked about like the importance of taking good notes and having process for that. Take good
Yeah.
notes, and start off with just straight up curation. Like, you don't actually have a point of view yet, right? But you can still begin building a platform. You can begin finding your voice, and you can begin making those mental connections and taking all the stuff that you're reading and all the notes that you're capturing and start to put things together. And just the act of curation is really valuable to people. And you can often draft off of the experience and expertise of other people. By being a good curator, that is a way of signaling, I understand what makes what good and bad looks like in whatever discipline it is. And so it's a good way of like faking it without actually having to say anything of your own. And we had a really good concrete example of that. Um, the consulting practice, we became part of how we became known for like growth in Chicago, at least. And what led to my role at Kellogg and some of these other things was when like the growth hacking movement first started. And we had been wanting to do some meetups and those types of things anyway. And that was just emerging. And so in an afternoon, we put up a meetup site for Chicago growth hackers. And we sent an email out to mostly people in the Valley and just said, hey, if you're ever in Chicago, we'll organize an event around you, and you can talk about whatever you want or whatever it was. And we did probably 6 or 7 of those events, and we didn't say anything. Like, all we did was introduce them and let them have a platform, but we became known as the people to talk to about growth, right? So
Yeah.
there's this strategy of curation when you're trying to learn. It is a way to start building your platform and start building your reputation and start finding your voice when you don't necessarily know what you think yet. And so it's kind of a nice like end around, and that'll get you, 3 months in, 6 months in. I had a friend when she was 24, she was trying to break into PR. And so she started a site called The Creative Career. And all she did was podcast interviews like this, or like screencasts or whatever, where she would interview mid-level PR people. So people who weren't the president of Edelman, but like a director level person that doesn't get hit up all the time and would love the
Hmm.
opportunity to talk. And as a result of doing that, she actually built up her own audience. She kind of became this hub for like, how do you break into PR? She built all these relationships with these PR firms. Then she ended up getting a PR job inside development. So like, um, so when I give some version of that advice, I think a couple of things happens. One is people think it's a hack to get a job, and they're thinking about it in the short term of like, yeah, but how's this going to help me in 60 days?
Hmm.
And the answer is honestly, it's probably not, right?
Hmm.
But if you think about it again, if you're patient and if you understand that you don't have to microwave your results and get get what you're trying to get today. Um, Honestly, you could take any job, right, for now, and you could work on building that platform. Like if you can't get the job and product, spend a year building your platform, become known as somebody who knows about product, and then try again, and then just take whatever job you can take right now. But if you think about it like an investment in your long-term career,
Hmm.
as I'm sure you've probably seen, the relationships that you've built, um, the opportunities that you've been given probably in the last year relative to probably many of your peers by doing a lot of these types of things, um, can be pretty life changing. And so that that is probably some version of my advice. And I think it's only going to become more important as you think about like the second and third order effects of how this whole thing plays out. I think that we're realizing that work from home can work. Um,
Hmm.
and so that means, and a lot, I don't know what that means, and nobody knows what that means. But I have some theories. I think that probably um, being tall and being able to dress well doesn't matter as much anymore. I think probably like where you went to school might not matter as quite as much. Um, I think that there's going to be layers of like middle management that are going to go away because we realized that that wasn't like
Hmm.
totally necessary. And so I think that jobs are going to become more competitive, not less, probably.
Hmm.
And so I think having a platform becomes more important, not less, because if you're trying to find the best product person in Chicago, like you don't, when I think when people think of their platform, they're thinking about like, I've got to become um, like the Michael Jordan in my field. I'm trying to think of like somebody in a particular domain, but like Tyler Cowen or
Hmm.
just someone who's just this paragon of whatever. And that's not actually true. All you have to do is become known as like the guy or gal in Chicago who's in this space, or even like part of one of the 20 in this
Hmm.
space, and you will never be looking for a job ever again. And you can do that much easier than you think um, by building a platform. But you have to think of it as not a 6-week thing. You have to think of it like this is a this is a career long investment, and it's going to be something I'm going to do probably in perpetuity.
Hmm.
And if you continue to just put your bricks down, week by week or day by day or whatever it is, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, it's going to be amazing. But 5 years from now, it's going to be even more so. So
No, totally. I mean, just two things that you said. I mean, first, I love the phrase microwaving results. And I think I see so many. I mean, even I like, it's just, hey, like this is not working. Like let's do something else. Type of thing
yeah.
is so common. So I really like that phrase. And then the second thing is, you mentioned this in passing, but kind of reaching out to not the CEOs but the director level,
Mhm.
or the phrase that comes to mind that I've heard being used is like the shadow powers.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
just talk to us a little bit about like how you've seen that play out.
Well, I mean, I think, so again, what a lot of people try to do is, especially when they're younger, they ask for stuff. So they're always asking, right? And they feel like they have to ask either because they don't know any better, or when, even if you do give them the advice that the secret to kind of networking is to just be a gratuitous giver, right?
Hmm.
They don't think that they have anything to give. And they're right, it is harder to have
Hmm.
something to give, but what you can give is, um, you can give people exposure, and you can give them access to your platform, and you can give them an opportunity to sort of share their wisdom. And I'm a huge believer that like the 26-year-old has wisdom for the 23-year-old. Like they think again that they have to be um like genius level in order to do this. And the reality is like a 26-year-old who's been in their job 4 years ahead of you has advice for you that will be helpful. And no one's asking them to do that. And so people are flattered. I mean, and I've found this even, so for DI, one of the things that we did is we started a podcast called Disrupt, and like everybody, we started a podcast, but there is a whole universe of fascinating people out there that are not getting hit. Like everybody thinks that you got to go and get Elon Musk or whatever it is, but like I took my kids to Disney World for spring break, and the Magic Band experience was magic, like is incredible. And I was like, who in the world did this? And I tracked down the Magic Band guy, and he gets invited to some conferences and things like that. But the guy wrote back in an hour and was like, yeah, I'll totally do that. Like our hit rate cold, reaching out to pretty senior level people at these companies that are doing really neat stuff, I would say is probably 70%. And again, it's like you're making them feel good. They have an opportunity. Like I get gratification doing this. You get gratification doing this. Like it feels good that somebody cares about what you think. And so there is an entire universe of people where if you wanted to get a job in a particular domain, start a podcast and reach out to those people. And you're not asking for a job at all. You are saying, hey, I would love to interview you for people that are looking to kind of break into your field. And you're building relationships. And again, the downside to it is that it takes longer than, it's not a 6-week thing. The upside is that it's an investment in your career, and it's an asset that you're building that will compound. And I think a lot of young people think of their time as sort of this linear time in, time out thing, and they don't necessarily think of it as like your ability to use time to build asset value. And it's just a much, much better way to approach your career and to kind of live your life. And I've seen the alternative. Like I keep getting LinkedIn, I'm connected to a lot of my students, and I'm seeing a lot of them on LinkedIn that are just posting, hey, I've applied to 500, and these are really talented people, but they're trying to play the normal game of submitting your resume through the job site, getting screened by the computer. You're just another piece of paper to them or whatever it is. And a lot of them aren't hiring right now. It's like, you have to play by different rules. And the exciting thing is that the rules aren't that, first of all, they're not that hard, right? It's not, you're not like laying railroad track. You're sending some cold emails, right? And like figuring out how MailChimp works. Like it's not that big of a deal. But two, it's also a lot more fun, and it's exciting, and you feel like you have agency, and you feel like you're in control of your destiny. And when it starts to work, like I have an associate at the venture fund, a young guy, really talented, very aggressive, was a pitcher, in college, and just as a doer. And he started just sharing. He was the most, we have a worth reading channel on our Slack, and he was the most aggressive at sharing links and providing commentary. And I was like, hey man, like you should turn this into and again, like Substack is whatever, but I'm like, you should turn this into a Substack. Like you don't have to write these big, long things. And he did. And he's being like, not that this matters a ton, but like he's being followed by very well-respected people in the VC world that don't know who I am and don't care anything about me. And like, he has a relationship with some of these people. And I fully expect in a year or 2 years, he's going to come into our office. He's going to be like, hey, I'm going to work for Benchmark or whatever. And I'm going to be like, proud of you, like you did it.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. And he's been doing it for 3 months, and he's, got however many, like, it's just, if you're willing to put in a little bit of work and play by slightly different rules, and you consider it a long-term investment in your time, it's just, and he's been doing that too. Like he curates the thing, right? He references them in his tweet. He sends them an email letting them know that he referenced them in their thing. And that's how he's building relationships. He's not asking for a job. I'm willing to bet that his long-term vision, not that founder equity isn't amazing and, we're the next benchmark, but, like, I think he's playing a long game, and I appreciate it. I think it's going to totally work out for him. So.
Do you wanna plug this for him? Do you want to give a plug for all the college students watching this so that they can go
For him,
subscribe to
yeah,
this? Yeah.
stealing signs. I think it's
Okay.
stealing signs.substack. And guy's name is Jackson, and he's probably
Yep.
24.
Yep.
Okay, you know who he is. Oh, there you go.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
um, yeah, and he started it 3 or 4 months ago, and
Yeah.
I just think it is such a superpower to um, see how the game is played a little bit differently and being willing to take a little bit of a risk. And I think, getting back to my students and why I give some version of this advice to every single cohort of my students, because I'm like, my class is a digital marketing class, but I say, other than paid acquisition, 90% of what we're going to talk about is perfectly applicable to you at a personal branding level.
Hmm.
And you should
Okay.
all be doing this because, again, I think it's going to get more competitive, and it's not going away. And if there isn't somebody right now who's known as like the expert in transfer pricing and has cornered that niche on social, there will, right?
Yeah.
And it's inevitable, and it might as well be you. And almost none of them do it. And I've spent a lot of time trying to think about why it is, and I think it's because you go to a place like Kellogg, you're really good at understanding how to how the system works, and you also have a really positive, like you probably haven't really truly failed a whole lot. You probably got good grades pretty much all the time, and so doing things that are outside of the box and being willing to fail, I think, is probably scary for them. And so when you talk about like put your ideas and your thoughts out into the universe, I think it's scary to them. And it's like, well, what if it doesn't work? And it's like, if it doesn't work, no one's going to notice it. It doesn't,
Hmm.
they're not walking around thinking about like, what did Brian wrote that newsletter? It was so dumb. Like they're not thinking about you at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
No. Totally. I 100% agree with you. Um, and as you said, like I've been writing for about a year now, and I've totally
Why did
seen.
you start?
So I started as I would do like kind of mostly book notes and like article notes
Yeah.
on my own, just like on the notes app. So I would just like share it to myself, and then I would just type whatever 3 sentences. And I was
Yeah.
like, do you know what? Like, if I put like 20 to 30% more effort in, I
Yeah.
could make this publishable.
Sure.
So I started off just as that. And then I was lucky enough to get some early taste of like relationships. Like I think someone reached out to me from the Google office in Chicago, like I think like 3 months in, and was
Yeah.
like, "Hey man, really like your stuff." I think he found me on Twitter. It's like, would you want to come have like a tour of the Google Chicago office?
Yeah.
Now, I walked from like in front of the Google Chicago office. I was like, it looks pretty cool. Like would love to check it out. And so, I was lucky enough to get that kind of early taste of how that feels like. And so
Yeah.
that gave me the motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. Like the best thing is not, someone, I don't know, like, your friends don't have a group chat, without you, where they're like making fun of what you're writing about. It's like the worst thing is like irrelevance.
That's
Um,
right. That's right.
and like if it's irrelevant, then no one's saying anything about it anyways, so it doesn't
That's
matter.
right. That's right.
um so,
Well, and
but
it's hard. I mean, like you said, that 3 month thing was kind of random. I think that's the other thing that's hard about it for people is they think of it like it's the sort of, I call it an income statement versus balance sheet thinking. So it's like,
hmm,
I'm going to put in 3 hours of work and I'm going to make X amount of money from it. It doesn't work
yeah,
that way, right? Like you don't even know what the opportunities are going to be or who the
yeah,
people are that you're going to build relationships with, but
yep,
just watching you sort of passively in some of the relationships that you've built with people are the kind of, I mean, like are very aspirational kind of people. And it happened probably kind of serendipitously. It probably wasn't a thing that you even were expecting in most cases. But it's kind of like building a business that way. It's like I get paid, sometimes I get paid a lot, sometimes I get paid nothing, right? And it just
yeah,
happens. And the opportunities that come, in this case, like there's no negative thing. So it's even better than a business, right? Because it's not
yeah,
like
no downside.
no downside. It's just like
No downside.
lots of nothing, and then some really amazing things in between,
Yeah.
So
No, totally. And the best metaphor that I've figured out for this whole like serendipity, thing is like there's like a river, and this is the river of like whatever people you want to connect with, influencers, whatever, like
Yeah,
people you want to get a job with. You have a field that's like a couple of miles away from them,
yeah,
right? You have no way of like, you're not going to carry like the cold email equivalent is like going to the river, getting a bucket, and then trying to water your field,
yeah,
right? Or you could dig a ditch, between those two places, and like you can get the water to flow to you.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and that's kind of the metaphor that I've used to explain, which is, sure, it's not totally like you can't manufacture it, but you can at least provide a channel for it to happen.
100%.
um, and I think that's what people mean when people use the phrase like you create your own luck. I think you
Mhm.
create chances for you to get lucky.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and so totally. And just now I want to get super tactical, and I want to get to I definitely want to talk to you about the 525, 125 thing or 150 thing,
sure,
because
sure.
I think that tons of people are interested in, not just right now, but just in general, like how to do quote unquote networking. I know that's kind of a loaded term. But
Yeah,
just how to do that. So I think let's start with that, and then I'll kind of go through. I know you're a big fan of scenario planning. You recently had a tweet about like how you should plan out your scenarios and kind of have two or three different things. So let's start off with the 525
okay,
150 thing, and then I'll kind of give you a couple of scenarios which I know people in, and then maybe you can just suggest your thoughts on that.
sure. So, okay, so the 525 thing, I had a buddy, and this is I'll acknowledge that I've never implemented it to the degree that this guy did. But what he basically did is he had a spreadsheet and he had 5 names, 25 names, and 125 names, or 150 names, one of the two. And he thought of them as like concentric circles. And I think he, there's that whole like sociological theory about the number of relationships you can maintain and all that kind of. But his basic idea was he started from the premise that networking is about generosity, and and then about just sort of being top of mind and just reminding people that you exist, and that you're looking out for them and that you care about them, and that's all you really have to do. And so he kind of took it to this sort of really high level where he identified 5 people at a time. um, and what most people would do is they would think about like those 5 people are the 5 people that are most important, either most important to me, so like my closest colleagues or whatever, or the people that I want something from. He did it differently, where the 5 people were the people that he felt like had the most acute need, that he could like
Hmm.
do overwhelmingly above and beyond to help out. And so like he would get coffee with somebody and they're thinking about changing jobs or something like that. He if they got into his 5, he would it was like what's the best possible version of helping somebody for something like that. And it was more than like, oh, I know somebody, I'll do the double blind intro. That's great, it's totally great. But he would literally like go through his entire network and he would be like,
Yeah.
who's everybody I could introduce this person to. He would find very often, you give advice lives inside of books. He would physically buy the book and send it to them. he
Hmm.
would he knew how to do a little bit of web design, so like on more than one occasion I know he would actually like design their online resume or portfolio or whatever for them. Like he would be so generous
Hmm.
with his time that it just blew people away, and it earned him a lifetime of respect from them. And he never asked for anything in return. He didn't have to, because they knew who he was and what he was about and the things that he was doing. And he would talk about his challenges and things like that. And like he was like, again, it's not income statement thinking. It's an asset, and I have no idea how it's going to pan out. And in many cases, it never pans out. Many of those people say thanks, and then nothing ever comes of it, and that's totally fine. Um, but he's like, I promise you the ROI on it is there. Um, it just happens in a very sort of circuitous way. And it's not, I don't think it's his primary reason for doing it, because I think if it were, he wouldn't keep up with it. And so he did 5 because he felt like that was the max he could really do this for in any given time. And then once they were helped out, he would move them down into 25 or to 125 or whatever it was. But so it basically was like, if you think about that, and let's assume that the 5 people change, let's be conservative, on a quarterly basis. Here are 20 new relationships a year where you did something that is completely unforgettable for them, that they will never ever forget. And you multiply that times 10 years or 20 years or a career, you will have an army of people who are looking out for you and who want to help you and will do whatever they can to find you clients or promote your new thing, or get your kid tickets to that game or whatever it is. So he just it just was a really, really neat system, and he just did it all through. A lot of people get hung up on like the tools and stuff like that. He just had like a Google sheet. That's all he did. And it was just, he looked at it, he had it open all day long on his desktop. Most people have email open. He had his spreadsheet and he lived inside that thing. And he was just constantly thinking about, how can I help people? How can I help people? How can I help people? So it was, I try to do a version of that. It's not as good. I try to set reminders. So I use OmniFocus a lot for like my personal management stuff. And I'm a big like GTD type of person. So like, the tickler file is like my big. So when I'm on a call with somebody, I'll make a note and then it goes in my tickler file and then I don't have to think about it. And then a month later it pops up and it's like, hey, reach back out to Nick and ask how he's doing. So that's sort of been my version of it. I wish I could, I frequently want to fully implement his version of it. And I did try to take his advice, like when I know somebody, when I know a friend has like an acute need, that his advice comes up to mind very often. It's just not, I haven't been able to do it as systematically as he has, but I think anybody that would, their career would be just transformed, so.
No, I mean, totally. I think with the extreme, examples of these, the advice to be taken away is like, hey, just do like half of this, like, or just do this like half as good.
Oh,
You'll
yeah.
still be ahead of like 99.9% of people.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
All right. So let's move into a little bit of scenario planning, and I have a feeling you've already covered this. So if it gets too repetitive,
Sure.
just say, exactly what I said before about, building platform, whatever. And feel free to interject me.
No problem.
So, a few of my friends, seniors and juniors, they've had their full-time or internship offers rescinded due to sort of COVID-19. What kind of advice would you give, just super tactfully, and just to approach, let's actually talk about the short-term stuff, because I do think that, for many people, it's just a reality, like,
Yeah, sure.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So these are internship offers?
Or, full-time offers.
Okay. So if it were me, and so I would do the platform thing. So like at night or whatever it is. The short-term thing, what I would do, and this is a very unpopular piece of advice that anytime I share some version of this, nobody.
I'm already excited.
Not a positive feedback loop. Take the job for free. Like so I have a story for this. So my career again. So I went to Seattle. I was waiting tables at a seafood restaurant. Could not get a job. I met a girl in Vegas at a bachelor party that lived in Manhattan. She turned out to be my wife, so it worked out. But I moved. I went to New York 3 months later, because I was like, I'm waiting tables at a seafood restaurant in Seattle. Like, why not? And so I drove to New York, and I got a job as an account manager at you call it, I guess, a tech startup. It was 2004. And I was an account manager. It was in the higher ed space. But I really wanted to be like a creative director someday. And they had a design director at the time. We were making 350 like websites a year. These were like lead gen sites, basically, for university admissions departments. So it was kind of a crank. I went to the design director and I said, I would like to practice. I want to be a designer someday, but I suck.
Mm.
So I would like to practice on my clients because they're real projects with real constraints. I'm going to do it at night. You don't have to pay me. Um, and um, all I want is to be able to share it with you. And then like once a week, could you spend 30 minutes with me and give me feedback? You never have to show it to a client or whatever it was. And he said, sure. And I did. Thankfully, he was very generous with his time to do that. But so for a year, I went to Starbucks from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and I would work on design projects because I got reps with real projects. And I was thinking all I cared about was my portfolio and getting as many opportunities to kind of execute as I could. And literally for a year, I did this, and it sucked and sucked and it sucked and it sucked and it sucked. And I think like 6 months in, I had done 30 or 40 of these things, and one was good enough to show to a client. And I was sitting there, presenting it as if I wasn't the person that created it. And she ripped it to shreds because it wasn't very good. But I felt really great because like a client saw it or whatever it was. But like fast forward, like that guy ended up leaving the company about 18 months after I was there, and I took over his job. So, and my salary tripled. And I did it, I had a job, but like I was getting, I think my starting salary was $35,000 living in Manhattan. So, and then I was doing all this stuff for free. So like I think what most people would have done would have said, I'm not going to do that work unless I'm going to get paid. And I have an hourly rate, and I'm going to command that hourly rate, but I wasn't good enough. Like I couldn't have justified an hourly rate. So what I wanted was as many laps as I possibly could. And if I was trying to monetize right away and charge for my services weren't good enough to get my work. And so all of which is to say, like, if you have an opportunity and you have an in at a company and you want to be at that company long term, and they're saying they're not going to hire you right now because of money, then take the money thing off the table and like go seriously, like go be a barista at Starbucks, like anything, get the reps. And because like what your alternative is, like you're going to start over from scratch and try to get another job in a similar field where nobody's hiring anyway. Like you're in the door, right? They know who you are. You're a known quantity. It's where you think you want to be long term anyway. Like that would be my and I don't want to trivialize it. Like I get that there are economic realities and things like that.
Yeah.
But what I will say is like, I had those economic realities too, right? Like I graduated and I had student loan debt. I made $12,000 my first year out of college. I had I did not make enough money to realistically live in New York City. And so I had literally the worst apartment you could possibly imagine. So like, I know what it is like to not have enough money to make it all work. But I took a risk and I saw what the potential upside would be. And I would guess that a lot of those students are similar to me in the sense of like, they have good families and they have a fallback plan. So like, I don't want to make this universal. And like, there are many, many people that have 3 kids and they're working a single job and they don't have a degree in Northwestern. There's a lot of privilege. Like I definitely started off, rounding third. So I don't want to trivialize any of that at all. But I think having that long view, doing whatever you need to, like a huge reason why I'm like a big fan of like the meditation stuff and all that kind of thing is like, you have to be able to get your mind detached from the emotional fear of all of it. And because I feel like it compromises your decision making. And so like, if you take the emotion out of the picture and you just think about it objectively and you think about how long am I going to be in my career? This is a blip. It's not the end of the world. And like, what would being able to do this work, even if I'm not getting paid whatever an intern's going to get paid, which is not much, what would that be worth to me? And then take action accordingly. That's what I would do.
No, totally. I mean, 2 lessons from that. First is go to Vegas if you want to, find someone to marry.
Yeah, right.
And then the second one is sort of the self-reflection piece. And I think you touched on it a little bit towards the end, but when you said, I kind of, you said something along the lines of, I looked at my work and like, it wasn't good enough. I think, as you've described, like people who come to Kellogg or come to Northwestern in general, like that's hard to do. That's hard
Yeah,
to like kind of look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, like I'm a 22-year-old, like I really don't know anything. Um,
right.
and
Well, and a lot of job like so I think a lot of people think that it's the job of the employer to create your career path, to hire you when you don't have the skill set yet and teach you how to acquire that skill set. And there are companies that do that, right? They tend to be larger companies. They tend
yeah,
to have a very well-defined kind of training program and all those kinds of things. There are many, 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 many companies, the majority of companies, I would say, have horrible training practices, horrible onboarding practices. I put ourselves in that. Like it's hard to do and it's never a
yeah,
priority. And so they will always choose to bring in the person who's a little bit more fully formed versus
hmm,
the person who has to learn on the job. Um, and so I think, but the opportunity, like the opportunity is that all this stuff is available anyway,
hmm,
right? Like you think about like my course. There's no textbook for my course, and it is if I'm being, I think that there's a version of myself that would like to think that it's all hard won wisdom and expertise. I bet 85% of my course material you could find with Google searches, right?
hmm,
So like the curriculum is out there for whatever it is you want to do. You want to become a product manager? I promise you, you can get best practices in 90 days and know exactly what you need to do. And then the rest of it is about building relationships and like making yourself having a good, strong kind of position, use branding
yeah,
parlance,
yeah,
and having the portfolio that demonstrates that you have the expertise. And like, how do you get that if you don't have the job? Do reps, do the work for free, curate, build relationships, do all of this other kind of stuff to kind of make up for the fact that like you're an unknown quantity. Anything you can do to kind of um, overcome that, I think is worth doing. So
no, totally. I 100% agree, and I think that the I I think like being super honest with yourself, it just all starts there, right?
yeah,
Um, and so that would just be my my addition to that. Um,
that's one reason. I mean, incidentally, that's one reason why you'll never, or very rarely will you see me um, thought leadership from a like a VC perspective, because I don't think I'm that good right now. Like I'm
yeah,
trying, and but I'm focusing on learning, and I'm realizing that this is a 10-year journey, and so I'm not gonna pretend like I am an expert at seeing the second and third order effects of how things are all going to play out, and um, I don't think I have um, a super comprehensive view of like the macro, which is where we talked about like note taking things. Like I still do this stuff now. Like
yeah,
I print out papers. I've got notes everywhere. I'm taking notes constant, like every single
yeah.
day. I'm doing this. I try to carve out an hour, and I'm learning because I'm still trying to get better at what I do. And so, yeah, I think you have to be legit honest with yourself and try to be as objective as you possibly can. Having mentors can be helpful there. Like if you're bad at it, having a mentor can help. I think having frameworks can be really helpful. Like
Okay.
for my marketers, I use something. Brian Balfour has this thing called the T-shaped marketer, and it's
Hmm,
just basically he just put it in a little tweet, but it's
yeah.
like 20 or so competencies or skills, and I have my team assess themselves on it. So it's like rather than saying I'm a
Huh.
good or a bad marketer, let's get specific, right?
Hmm,
What are behavior psychology? You good at that? Copywriting, analytics, SQL. Like let's get really concrete. Um, and be honest, as soon as you do that, like there's nothing wrong with being sucky at something,
yeah.
nothing wrong with being sucky at something and pretending that you're not sucky at something, because then you're not going to do the work to get better. So
Yeah, no, totally. I heard a joke or which was that on VC Twitter, like it's if you write the words "I don't know," you get automatically reported, because it definitely seems like that sometimes. But just on a final note, wanted to get through one because I do know that tons of my friends are in this scenario.
yeah,
So I'd love to squeeze this one in. I know you have a call right after this, so
yeah,
I'll keep it short.
no, it's good.
Basically, um, you know, some people have been lucky enough to keep their offers.
Okay.
and have gotten, they were supposed to start in like August or July
Yep.
even.
Yep.
And companies are saying, hey, come to us in January or come to us in March, or so they kind of have this like, and they still want to be in these jobs. And so they now have like a 6 month vacation,
Yep.
right? They've already graduated or will soon be graduating. How should they best use these months? I mean, sure, take the time to relax, but
Yeah.
that gets boring pretty soon. And so, what's the game plan? Lay out the timeline for us.
Okay. Week one, you put up a website, and
Okay.
it could just be like the beauty of like a Substack, for example, is that it's already built for you, and it's
Okay.
free, and you don't have to worry about design and get all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Uh, Whatever the discipline is, get every book that you can find on Kindle or whatever. Set a goal to read a book every single week. Do kind of what you do, I think, which is read a book a week or ish,
Yep.
and
Yep.
like take good notes, summarize it. Start curating. Read, like, figure out who the 100 people are to know in your field. Follow them
Okay.
on Twitter because Twitter is a magical place.
Okay.
Um, like their stuff. Follow them when they share content. Um, you know, to the degree that you're curating, share their stuff with like one or two paragraphs of commentary, send them the email to let them know that you shared it, like
Yeah.
at them through your whatever, and just repeat and do that for 6 months. And I guess the one other piece I would add to it is I love this idea, and I sort of got this idea from Andrew Chen
Okay.
when he started blogging probably 10 years ago. One of the first things he did was he basically wrote an outline of what he was going to be doing
Huh.
or covering kind of over the next 2 years, right? And in his case, it's a little bit different because he already had the knowledge and then it was just about kind of writing it down. But what I liked about it was almost this like his unified theory of growth, right?
Huh.
And I love this idea of, and it could be a Notion document, it could be a Word document, it could be whatever it is, but it's like as you're doing all this reading about things, like create one of the things I do, like I read pretty broadly now because I feel like I've learned it's helpful and I'm trying to get better at like mental models and like being able to sit in a meet like the one of the VC superpowers is pattern recognition. And so being able to sit and make connections from wildly disparate places. But if you're trying, like, to use the product example, if you're trying to get known in product, like you can take those books and like Udemy courses or whatever, and you can build yourself basically an outline of like, what are all the things that I need to know? And in a 6 month period of time, I bet that you could read 10 articles about how to create a product roadmap or a book about, and a couple books, and filter all that stuff out and kind of synthesize it. And this is Sean's approach to building a product roadmap. And then the last thing I would do is I would, to the degree that you can, try to get reps. And by that, I mean, create exercises for yourself that allow you to practice. And so there's certain jobs where it's easier than others, like obviously coding, you can do that. Designers can do like one design a day. And I really
Yep.
like when they like, there's a lot of people in Dribble that taught themselves design by like, oh, I'm going to make a login form today, or I see a design that I really admire. I'm going to try to deconstruct that and figure it out.
Mm.
People have done it with writing. So like the famous story of like Ben Franklin tried to like write in certain people's, like you can break that all. And I know I think you took David Perel's course, maybe. There's some
Yep.
great resources for that. But like figure out a way to practice whatever it is that you're doing. So like with my class, I have them go through the process of creating a digital marketing plan for a startup as if it was them. And so they do the keyword research and they go into Ad Manager and figure out like what their volume and competitiveness and all this stuff would be, and like figure out their meta narrative and come up with a on-site like do all of these things as if they were doing it. Anything you can do to get yourself like as close to the metal as possible or whatever, as close to the actual practice of it,
Yep.
would be beneficial. So creating your own opportunities to do exercises would be the other piece.
No,
And then
totally.
lastly is again, like if you're doing the curation thing, like if you have 6 months and you have 6 months, do networking by giving people something. And that could be asking them to do an interview kind of like this or whatever it is. but that'll be a way to cut yourself in the front of the line and build, 30 new relationships with people that you'll want to know long term. And I would be shocked if that doesn't turn into something useful. So.
No, totally. Thanks, Sean, for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I know I'm gonna I'm already just excited to share this with all my friends and stuff.
Yeah.
I had to, by the way, most of these questions were crowdsourced from my friends. And so,
Cool.
Just thanks for taking the time out, man.
Yeah, man. If they have any
I
other
really appreciate
questions,
it.
feel free to give them my info. Or, I mean, obviously I'm on Twitter as well, and I like to talk. So, yeah, I'm happy to chat if you want to do a follow-up. Whatever it is. But yeah, no, man. And I think you're the perfect guy to be doing that, to be doing this for your friends. And, you've lived it. And, I'm sure you want to be further along than you are, but it's been really impressive to watch what you've been doing. And I wish at 22, 23 that the tools to do this kind of stuff were available, because it's just, and so few people take advantage. So I think it's awesome that you're doing it. I'm excited to kind of see where it takes you, and I'm sure you're going to be really, really proud, in another 5 years, 10 years of look at how far I came along and how much of it had to do with the stuff I started doing, in 2019. So.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. And, you've been an inspiration, as I said before, over the last, 3 to 4 years since I discovered you. So, thanks so much. I'm sure a lot of the stuff that I do indirectly, it all comes from, just your advice to kind of take initiative and, own the solution. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.